Three spine-chilling tales of haunted truckers, sinister encounters revealed on dark highways. The night was heavy with an eerie quiet, the kind that blankets lonely highways like a shroud. Alex gripped the steering wheel as he barreled down I-70, the rumble of his truck drowning out his racing thoughts. Shadows danced in his periphery, and fatigue gnawed at him like a hungry beast. He was just a lone soul in a metal box, navigating a world that felt haunted and hollow. When he spotted the flickering neon of a truck-stop diner, he felt a tug of relief. The glow was welcoming and ominous at once, illuminating weary faces inside, each driver lost in their own stories. He parked, the gravel crunching underfoot as he entered the diner, the heavy scent of stale coffee and fried food wrapping around him. "Did you guys hear about the phantom hitchhiker?" a driver asked, his eyes wide. The room fell silent, cups paused mid-sip. "Saw him last week, right out there on Route 66. Looked just like a lost soul. But I swear, when he got in my truck, he started speaking in whispers, saying things nobody should know." The laughter that followed had an edge of discomfort, a mask for their unease. The air felt thick with the weight of stories that lingered, tales of ghostly encounters and shadows lurking just beyond the headlights. Alex chuckled, but the laugh was distant, hesitant. What was it about the solitude of the road that birthed these fears? Instead of comfort, he felt a creeping chill. As another driver chimed in about a truck that vanished into thin air, a sense of ominous anticipation settled over him. The night deepened, and just as he turned to leave, he noticed a figure outside, a stranger wrapped in a tattered coat, standing under the glow of the diner sign. The hitchhiker offered a crooked smile, beckoning. Against his better judgment and the warnings of his gut, Alex opened the passenger door. "Where you headed?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. The moment the man stepped inside, the air shifted. "I know you, Alex," the hitchhiker said, and Alex's heart dropped. "I know all about you." Paranoia bit deep as the hitchhiker revealed facts about Alex's life. Fears of abandonment, regrets over lost love, tragedies buried beneath years of asphalt. How could this stranger know? Each word became an icy claw gripping his throat, and the miles dissolved into silence, the headlights slicing through the dark. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just then, as they rounded a bend, the hitchhiker began to fade, slipping into the night like smoke whisked away by the wind. Alex blinked, and just like that, the space beside him was empty. Horror gripped him, ice cold. He slammed on the brakes, heart pounding, pulse racing as he glanced back at the empty seat. But the whispers came, a low, haunted tune that wrapped around his mind, and all he could think was, what had he let in? Was it just his tired mind playing tricks, or was there something waiting in the darkness, something that wouldn't let him go? With dread coiling in his gut, he felt the grip of the past tightening. Curiosity compelled him to drive on, deeper into the night, but somewhere in him, a primal instinct screamed to turn back. The darkness rolled on ahead, relentless and unforgiving. The next figure he saw, illuminated in his headlights, sent a shiver of recognition through him as he approached, a ghost from his past. In that split second, reality splintered, leaving him wondering just how far he would have to go to escape the whispers that promised to consume him whole. The figure stepped into the glow of the headlights, and Alex's heart felt ice in his veins. It was Sarah, the girl he once loved. Her features, obscured by the shadows, were now frighteningly familiar yet disquieting, painted by the past in hues of regret. "Alex?" Her voice cut through the darkness, trembling like a brittle leaf. Something was wrong. The way she looked at her, the vacant stare, the tightness in her jaw, it twisted his stomach. "Help me!" "Sarah, is that you?" he called out, the disbelief thick in his throat. He barely remembered the last time he'd seen her, years ago, when life had veered into a tragedy. Now here she was, drenched in darkness, standing on the road he traveled. The memory washed over him, a night filled with tears and the sharp scent of burnt rubber. He had failed her once. He'd been too late to save her from the accident. A wild storm, a reckless drive. Guilt wrapped around him like a noose. "Please get out of the truck," she pleaded, her voice turning desperate. "You have to hurry." The truck's interior felt claustrophobic, echoes of his past climbing the walls of his mind. He could see her pleading eyes reflecting back at him. An instinct urged him to reach out. But there was something ugly lurking behind the surface, something that twisted the warmth of their shared memories into something grotesque. "What do you want from me?" he shouted, panic igniting like wildfire. The sound of his own voice seemed to bounce off the walls of reality, distorting everything. "I'm not safe. They're coming for me." Her silhouette wavered, as if she were caught in a flickering film reel. Alex's breath quickened. Who were they? What did they want? Before he could comprehend it, the whispers crept back, gliding over him like an oily residue. They echoed with familiar tones, fear, despair. It turned his mind into a labyrinth filled with shadows. He was trapped by specters of his own creation. Driven by horror, he slammed the accelerator. The truck lurched forward, and he fought against the terror clawing at him, determined to flee. But the road ahead started to morph, bending under the weight of memories, hands grasping at him from the ether, suffocating. Alex swerved, trying to escape the visions gnawing at his sanity. The night darkened, and Sarah remained a stubborn ghost in the rearview mirror, urging him deeper. Strange shapes began to blur into view on the edges of the highway, misshapen figures resembling lost souls wandering aimlessly. Each figure whispered his name, a haunting chorus that echoed endlessly. "Turn around," a voice cried from behind. The fear pooled in his stomach, each voice another reminder of the weight he carried. "Face what you've done." But Alex pressed on, adrenaline pumping, blinding fear driving him into the unseen. Just as he felt he might break free, the road twisted around him, an unseen force pulling him where he feared to go. Scraps of his life disintegrated in the black haze, every mile fueling the darkness tightening around him. The truck rattled, reflecting his turmoil. Options dissipated like mist in the morning sun. There was nowhere left to escape, but the whispers grew louder, drawing him in, drawing him down. "Why won't you stop?" Sarah's voice pierced through, raw and filled with pain. "Why won't you save me?" He was losing grip on reality as the headlights pierced through the mass of shadows ahead, revealing a chilling sight. A barrier loomed where the asphalt should have been, a dead end filled with twisted, broken remnants of vehicles, abandoned and desolate. Panic surged anew. Was this where his journey would end? Was there truly no escape from the sins of his past? In a heartbeat, the shadows seemed to coalesce into a single entity in the distance, and without another thought, Alex knew he had to confront it. In that moment, reality slipped further away like a forgotten dream. He could either face the truth or plunge deeper into the darkness that sought to claim him. He took a deep breath, his heart racing. What would he find on the other side of the barrier? As the truck rolled closer, the figure in the shadows stepped forward, arms spread wide. Alex could feel the weight of the past crashing against him, rippling into the present. The whispers intensified, threatening to drown out his thoughts, but he needed to know. What would happen when he crossed that threshold?
The truck slowed to a crawl, its engine sputtering as Alex gripped the wheel, knuckles white. The figure before him solidified, revealing a face twisted by grief and shadows, a face he recognized from the night when everything unraveled. "Alex, you shouldn't have come." It was not Sarah anymore. This voice was deeper, distorted.
"You should have left the past buried." Panic clawed at his throat, a choking sensation that mirrored the tightening grip of the dark surrounding him. Was this his guilt incarnate? The ghosts of choices long lost? "Who are you?" Alex shouted, desperation spilling into the night. "What do you want?" "We want you to remember," the figure hissed, a ghostly finger pointing at him. "Every soul you left behind, every tear not wiped away." Shadows swirled around it, coalescing into forms that mirrored the lost faces from his past, friends, family, each accompanied by cries of pain and betrayal. He slammed the door locks, though in this eerie realm protection felt futile. The suffocating silence stretched, wrapping him in a vice of dread. The whispers began again, more intense, rising around him like a tidal wave. "Face it, Alex! Face yourself!" With a surge of adrenaline, he threw open the truck door, the cold air biting at his skin. Feet unsteady, he stumbled out, heart pounding a frantic beat against his ribs. The world spun, engulfing him in darkness that felt alive, pulsing, hungry. "Save me, Alex!" The familiar plea of Sarah echoed, a ghostly sound bouncing from the wreckage of vehicles littered around him, shards of metal rusted and forgotten. "I'm still here." A shadow surged forth, morphing into a reflection of the night he tried to forget, the accident. The thunderstorm, the blinding rain pelting against the windshield, and Sarah's terrified scream. It crashed into him like a tidal wave. The guilt washed over, drowning him in bitter tears he couldn't shed then. "Come back!" another voice taunted, a wisp of air brushing against him. It was an echo, cold as ice and sharp as glass. With each whisper, the darkness thickened, the forms of lost souls twisting, tugging at him, drawing him towards the wreckage that loomed like a siren's call. "Stop!" he screamed, but the words fell flat against the suffocation of anguish surrounding him. Amid the chaos, a flicker of light shone deep within the wreckage. The remnants of his past shone like burning embers, a fleeting hope piercing through despair. He had to know, were these echoes of the dead, or was it a chance for redemption trapped in the ruins of his making? He raced toward it, heart hammering like a drum, the shadows closing in. They yanked at him with tortured cries, tearing at his mind, each step he took plunging him deeper into memories that threatened to consume him whole. But with each stride, a flicker of certainty began to grow. He could confront them, face them all. The light pulsed again, a beacon in the torment. It felt both inviting and terrifying. Resolute, he pushed forward, desperate to seize that glimmer of hope. "What do you see, Alex?" the shadows roared. "Will you run again?" Without answering, Alex reached out, fingers brushing against something solid buried beneath the debris. It was a piece of his past, jagged and sharp, a fragment of the truth that threatened to unveil everything he feared. But the moment was shattered as the dark energy surged, tugging at him, and the whispers rose in a crescendo of horror. "You cannot escape!" The moment hung heavy in the air, a tipping point. What would emerge if he unleashed the truth? What horrors awaited him if he delved deeper into the unseen?
Alex gritted his teeth, adrenaline coursing through him as he prepared to confront the nightmares. The light flared bright, battle lines drawn in a confrontation he could no longer avoid. But was he strong enough to face the flood of memories and the wrath of the past? And what if the truth was far worse than he could ever imagine? The moment his fingers brushed against the cold, jagged edge, a surge of energy coursed through him, as if pure electricity had jolted him back to reality. The light pulsed fiercely, now illuminating the wreckage with vibrant intensity, fighting back shadows that loomed like predators. But the brief flicker of hope was fleeting, and the truth remained just out of reach. "Don't you want to know?" the figure whispered, its voice slithering into his ear, chilling his blood. Alex's heart raced, a drum echoing in the all-consuming silence. He didn't know if he wanted to know. The urge to flee surged within him, battling against the need for answers. The thought of running was tempting, but deep down he felt shackled to the past. "Remember!" the voices around him cried, a symphony of despair that echoed through the darkness. Faces twisted and distorted, their features fixed in eternal anguish, implored him to listen, to admit his sins. The weight of their pain pressed heavily on him, and each echo felt like a razor scraping against his conscience. But as he gripped a sharp object buried in the debris, a piece of twisted metal, cold and unyielding, fear turned to resolve. If he didn't face it now, would he? Warm droplets trickled down his cheeks, a reaction he had long denied. "I'm not afraid of you," he shouted, voice cracking against the winds that howled through the remnants of steel and glass. The shadows writhed, recoiling as if his words were a holy incantation. For a brief moment, he caught a glimpse of clarity amidst the chaos. The darkness seemed to hush, a lull before the storm. "Liar!" the figure sneered, now a mass of swirling despair, tightening its grip like a vice around his throat. "You're all alone, Alex. You have always been. Face it." He gritted his teeth, digging deeper into the twisted metal. Images flooded his mind, visions of laughter shattered by screams, glimpses of faces receding into nothing, each one more haunting than the last. Sarah, her blue eyes wide with fear as flames engulfed the car. Ethan, his best friend, staring lifelessly, a pool of blood spreading beneath him. "No!" he screamed. "I won't let you!"
"Do this!" Clenching the metal shard in his hand, he aimed its glint of light at the shadows. "I remember! I will not forget!" The darkness shuddered, the figures around him wailing in response, their cries merging into a cacophony of grief. Each pain-stricken face began to form words, stitched together from the fabric of his fractured past. "We trusted you." The rawness of their accusations sliced through him like a blade, exposing the weakness he worked so hard to bury. "Face yourself!" they shouted in unison, the energy around them tightening to a point of unbearable tension. Suddenly, a more profound clarity emerged from the chaos. The truck door behind him creaked open. An invitation? Or a warning? The air grew thick with anticipation. How much more could he endure? "Get in! You can't let them in!" A voice surged from the open door, sounding eerily like Sarah, but layered with something darker. His heart raced, torn between the flickering shadows and the eerie hope of the open door. What awaited him inside the truck? Would it be safety or a trap? Instinct screamed to run toward the light. But what if the light was a siren's call, drawing him into deeper darkness? "Alex!" the voices echoed, melding into one relentlessly urgent plea. "You cannot escape!" Every instinct told him to flee, yet something compelled him to step forward. The choice loomed before him, heavy and oppressive. He took a deep breath, casting a glance back at the swirling mass of faces combining into a single entity of sorrow. They swayed in dark rhythm, whispering secrets he feared to know. "Make your choice.
Their jeering laughter echoed, laced with sympathy that made his skin crawl. Would he yield to the shadows or embrace the light, whatever darkness it might bring? He stepped closer, ready to confront whatever awaited him. But just as he reached for the door, the world around him twisted violently, shadows slashing out, clawing at him as reality blurred. And then, blackness. A scream echoed, but it wasn't his. It was someone else's. What awaited Alex in the churning dark, and could he still hold on to the thread of hope? The answers lay just out of reach. The darkness was heavy, pressing against him like a thick fog, smothering his senses. Alex struggled to regain his balance, the edges of reality wavering as he swayed back and forth. He could hear his own breath, quick and ragged, but something else was there too. A distant sound, a low, guttural moan, just beyond the veil of black. His heart pounded like a war drum in his chest. "Who's there?" he shouted, voice cracking. Silence swallowed his words, stretching out like a taut wire ready to snap. The strain made his throat ache, but he stood firm, the metal shard still clutched tightly in his fist. "Get out!" the voice roared, the urgency thick with desperation. It echoed like a call for help lost in the abyss. Alex felt the hairs on his neck rise, instinct screaming at him to flee. But he couldn't, he wouldn't give in to that fear this time. He had to know. "Where are you?" he demanded, his voice more steady this time. "Show yourself!" The shadows around him twisted, forming amorphous shapes that started to solidify. Their outlines grew more defined, flickering like candle flames in the wind. Faces began to emerge, warped, haunted. Each pair of eyes was filled with a sorrow so profound it made Alex's chest tighten. "Remember us," one of them murmured, an anguished whisper that clawed at his soul. Alex's breath caught. The face. It was Ethan. "No!" Alex shook his head violently. "This isn't real." "Is it?" Ethan's voice wavered, dragging Alex back into the memories. They played against the blackness, vibrant and cruel. Their last drive, the laughter, the ignition of the flames. The sensation of helplessness washed over him, overwhelming and suffocating, as Ethan's face melted away into the shadows. "Stop!" Alex cried, overwhelmed by the haunting regret that filled the air. "I can't take it." But the voices only grew louder, merging into an insistent chant, calling him back to what he had tried so hard to escape. "You left us. You cannot outrun your sins," they echoed endlessly, a chorus of accusations that weighed him down. Suddenly, a rush of movement broke the suffocating gloom. A flicker of light burst through, pulling him towards something solid, a glimmering hope or another trap. "Get in the truck! Hurry!" That same voice pierced through the tumult, now repeating like a mantra. This time there was no fear behind it, only urgency. With instinct pulling him forward, he lunged toward the door again. It swung open wide, light spilling out like a warm embrace. But even as he stepped inside, a gut-wrenching howl erupted from the shadows. The faces turned, their expressions shifting from anguish to rage, their mouths breaking open wide, revealing dark voids where their screams erupted. "Don't go!" one voice snarled, clawing at the very fabric of the light. "You can't leave us!" He stumbled into the truck, heart racing, throat dry. The interior was dim but familiar. Old photos taped to the dashboard, the scent of gasoline and decay. He felt both comforted and nauseated. "Drive!" he shouted, slamming the door shut, the sound echoing like a final judgment. He fumbled for the keys, hands trembling, urgency coursing through him. But the chill of dread returned as he turned the key in the ignition. The truck's growl transformed into a monstrous roar, vibrating with malice, shaking him to the core. Out of the rearview mirror, he glimpsed shadows swirling, crashing against the vehicle, as if trying to suck it back into the abyss. As the engine sputtered and sparked to life, A raspy whisper emerged, shaping into words that twisted his insides. "You'll never escape," it taunted, reverberating through the metal shell. In that moment, Alex felt it, the pull of the past clinging to him like a suffocating shroud. With
the truck finally roaring to life, he slammed the gear into drive, tires screeching as he surged forward into the night. But ahead, the road was shrouded in darkness, and the shadows danced. They were still there, gnashing for retribution. What horrors awaited him beyond the murky road? Would the light lead him to salvation or deeper into damnation? The thought sent shivers racing down his spine as the sinister laughter echoed in his ears. The truck lurched forward, cutting through the night as if trying to slice the darkness that clung to it like a second skin. Alex's heart raced, a wild drum pounding in his ears. He pressed down on the gas, sending the vehicle roaring down the empty road, but the oppressive shadows trailed behind, relentless and hungry. "Just drive," he whispered to himself, desperation sharpening his focus. The headlights pierced the dark, illuminating twisted trees and the occasional glimpse of abandoned buildings that loomed like specters in his periphery. They felt alive, watching, waiting. But he couldn't look. They were not what haunted him, not now. Each mile felt like an eternity. The air was thick with dread, the truck vibrating beneath him as if it shared in his terror. He could still hear the echoes of those voices, still feel their anguished presence lingering like smoke. The faces they wore haunted him, pleading, accusing. Ethan's eyes burned into his memory, filled with betrayal and despair. A sudden movement jolted him. A silhouette crossed the road, barely illuminated by the headlights, before disappearing into the darkness. He swerved, adrenaline surging, the tires screeching against the asphalt. He barely regained control as the truck fishtailed, but his breath came hot and quick, panic clawing at his throat. "Get a grip," he shouted at himself. That was too close. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there, lurking just beyond the reach of the light. As the road straightened, Alex dared to glance at the rearview mirror. Relief flooded his chest when he saw nothing, just blackness behind him. No lake of shadows, no faces twisted in anguish. Maybe he was outrunning his nightmare. But that relief shattered when he turned back to the road. It wasn't empty. It was narrowing. The asphalt crumbled, overtaken by a suffocating darkness that loomed like a heavy curtain. Panic and disbelief washed over him as the path transformed, and the feral landscape closed in, almost whispering, "This is your end." He slammed the brakes, tires screeching, but the truck hadn't stopped moving. The laws of physics seemed to warp as he glided helplessly toward a yawning void, an abyss that beckoned in mocking silence. Ahead, flickering lights danced like false beacons, drawing him closer, promising hope but exuding danger. "No, not again!" he screamed as he cranked the wheel, desperately trying to turn back, but the darkness clawed at him, yanking away his control. Then, out of the horror, he saw them. Figures emerging from the shadows, their features distorted by anguish, their mouths moving in a silent scream. Silently, their faces pressed against the glass, cold fingers brushing the truck's surface. He squinted, his heart pounding painfully. He recognized one of them, and his insides turned to ice. "Ethan!" he gasped, the name slipping out like a confession. The truck jolted violently, crashing against an unseen barrier. Alex's world spun, thrown from side to side. He braced against the steering wheel, teeth gritted. The windows began to fog, breathless faces lingering there, their staring eyes seeping into his soul. "Join us," they whispered in unison, the chilling chorus creeping under his skin. The engine sputtered,
murmurs from the past swirling, choking him. He knew he couldn't let it take him, not this time. Throwing himself forward, he slammed the gear into reverse, hoping against hope that he could break free. He lurched backward, the shadows clawing at him more ferociously than before. A horrible screech echoed in the night. The very air seemed to tear, a rift born from his own fear. "Stop!" a voice thundered from the shadows, one familiar yet monstrous. "You cannot abandon us." The truck jerked violently as a force pulled at its frame, dragging it deeper into the darkness. The fear washed over him like a cold wave, drowning out his thoughts. Just as he thought he was lost, the headlights flickered and a surreal clarity gripped him. He glanced again at the figures, and his heart froze. Among them was something else, a shape darker than the void itself, with an insatiable hunger. "Run!" a desperate voice cried from somewhere inside, echoing within him. And with that, Alex gritted his teeth and pressed the gas harder, praying he could outrun both his darkest memories and the lurking horror awaiting him in the black abyss. But as the shadows pulled back and he sped forward, one lingering thought pierced through the chaos. What if escape had never been an option? What if the darkness had always been inside him, waiting for a chance to strike? Ahead, a swirling mist danced in the distance. Was it another trap or a new path? The engine roared as Alex hung on, a racing heartbeat leading him into the unknown. Uncertain if he was still alive or merely a specter chasing shadows. The mist thickened, wrapping around the truck like a serpent, and Alex squinted through the windshield, trying to make sense of the shapes flitting just beyond the headlights' reach. His mind raced, adrenaline fueling his every thought. That whispering dread crawled back up his spine, reminding him of the horrors he thought he had left behind. He was aware of the shadows fluttering outside, brushing against the truck's metal frame like ghostly hands. Each flicker of light sent shivers along his arms. A gnawing thought nestled in his brain. Whatever had chased him earlier wasn't done yet. Tension knotted at his stomach. Was it trying to lure him in? Tempting him closer with that deceptive veil of fog? He pressed the gas harder, willing the truck to respond, to cut through the murky barrier and find safety. But the road ahead twisted unnaturally, curving almost impossibly, as if it were a living entity determined to keep him ensnared. And then a figure lunged into view, almost blending into the mist as Alex slammed the brakes once more. His heart lurched as the truck skidded, tires screaming in protest. "Get back!" he shouted, panic setting in. The figure didn't move. Instead, it remained there, shrouded in gray, illuminated like a spotlight caught another nightmare. The face that stepped into the dim glow of the headlights turned Alex's blood to ice. It was Ethan, the man he'd lost, consumed by his own betrayal. But this wasn't the memory he'd clung to. This was something darker, more twisted. "Why did you leave us?" Ethan's voice echoed, distorted and hollow, reverberating off every surface. "You can't escape what you've done." Suddenly, the mist thickened, and from the edges of vision, more faces emerged. Each one filled with anguish, their eyes hollowed out, mouths forming silent screams. They crept closer, shadows flickering and twisting, merging into the very mist surrounding him. "Join us," they chanted, their words becoming a nightmarish mantra that drummed inside Alex's head. Breathless, he pressed against the steering wheel, trying to steady the trembling of his hands. This was madness. They weren't real, just figments of his shattered psyche, tormenting him with guilt. But as he tried to rationalize, the ground beneath him shifted. The asphalt warped, crumbling into dust as a dark maw formed ahead, gaping and calling out to him. He threw the truck in reverse again, echoing screams bouncing off the walls of his mind. But the shadows rushed against him, thundering like an approaching storm, crashing at the doors, trying to pull him back into the depths of his past. "Stop!" he screamed, anger boiling over. "I won't go back!" But the voices only grew louder, drowning out his defiance. "No more running," one hissed, a breath brushing coldly against his neck. Another voice broke through the chaos, deeper, resonating with palpable malice. "You must face your truth." A blinding light behind him made him jerk. From the corner of his eye, headlights pierced the storm, another truck barreling down the road right toward him. "Help!" he yelled, waving his arms frantically. But as the massive vehicle neared, he could see it, the twisted forms crowding the cab, faces twisted, reaching for him with desperate hands. Fear clawed at his throat. Was there anyone left in the world but these lost souls? Heart racing, Alex shifted forward, trying to escape. The ground shook, cracking beneath him. The dark void was closing in. He had to move or be swallowed whole. With a final roar, he pushed the gas, and the truck lunged forward, slinging him into a strange terrain, one where reality mixed with his deepest fears. In the chaos, one thought crystallized. Was the darkness really out there? Or had it always
been within him, waiting for the moment he would crack? Ahead, the path blurred into chaos, shifting with shadows that danced menacingly. But the headlights still flickered behind him, and something was gaining speed. A dark shape loomed, hurtling toward him, threatening to swallow him whole, with Ethan's lost echo fading into despair. Just as he thought hope was fading, the road split ahead. One path led into a swirling darkness, and the other into a faint, glowing light. But he had learned the hard way. Could either of them be trusted? He could only choose as the shadows closed in, their whispers inviting him to join them in their eternal despair. But which path would he take? The moment the wheels met the fork in the road, Alex's heart stopped. The swirling shadows spun around him, weaving illusions into reality, daring him to step toward either fate. The darkness pulsed with angry energy, a living beast whispering secrets of torment. The light ahead flickered like a distant memory, teasing him with the warmth of hope. But was it real, or a trick to ensnare him deeper in his guilt-ridden despair? "Choose," the shadows hissed, their voices coiling around his ears like serpents. "You cannot escape your sins." With sheer willpower, Alex fought against the dread gripping his throat. Sweat dripped down his temple as he gripped the wheel, knuckles white. If he had to pick one, which would be his salvation and which his doom? Time felt frozen, stretching into eternity as he stared into the darkness and the light. The shadows twisted, elongating into monstrous shapes that clawed at the edges of his sanity. He blinked against the weight of the looming guilt. Ethan's face flashed in his mind again, contorted with despair, haunting him through the fog like a candle's flicker in a storm. "Face us," they shouted together, a cacophony of broken spirits vibrating through the ground, shaking the truck. He hammered the accelerator. The engine roared in defiance as he shot toward the faint glow. The dark path receded, grudgingly allowing him passage. But just as he thought he had escaped, hands, ghastly and pale, gripped the truck's frame, claws sinking into metal. Faces appeared in the rear view, twisted and mournful, eyes wide with accusation. "You cannot run," they screamed, a chorus of agony spilling from their lips. Alex's pulse quickened, a flash of memory surged through him. Lost friendships and promises broken echoed painfully. The realization hit harder than any physical blow. He had always run away, leaving others to confront the fallout of his decisions. "Get out!" he yelled, the haunting wails growing more intense. Panic clouded his mind. But then came the unexpected. An abyss of silence enveloped him, scattering the shadows for a moment. He took it as a sign, a fleeting pause in the chaos. The truck shuddered, but kept moving forward, the glow growing stronger, brighter.
Hope surged, but it felt tainted. What if he was only trading one horror for another?
As he cruised into the light, the first hint of clarity washed over him. But it wasn't the escape he envisioned. The path revealed itself not as a safe harbor, but as a desolate wasteland, filled with remnants of lives once lived. Broken toys, tattered photographs, and echoes of laughter tainted by sorrow lined the edges. His stomach churned. These were fragments of those he'd left behind. His foot faltered on the gas pedal, and a chill coursed through him. The light dimmed, flickering like dying embers, and the shadows hungrily shifted around him, whispering louder now, demanding to be acknowledged. "You cannot deny it," a voice purred, more coherent now, pulling him into its embrace. "These are your shadows, the lives you abandoned." Alex steeled himself, heart racing, breathing heavily. "I can't do this, I can't." But the glow pulsed like a heartbeat, drowning out his reason. The more he resisted, the more the darkness wrapped around him. "What if we gave you a choice?" the shadows teased, their voices sultry, seductive. "Stay with us, or what?" he demanded, panic overflowing into fury. "What's the other side?" Another explosion of light struck as the truck rattled violently, echoing his turmoil. Two paths were laid bare again, this time more vivid. One filled with shadowy figures, their claws stretching toward him, and another a brilliant, blinding radiance that whispered promises of redemption. Sweat dripped down his face. The choice loomed, more pressing than death itself. With the shadows closing in and the light pulsing before him, Alex took a breath that felt like ice in his lungs. He had to choose. But did either path truly promise escape? He lurched forward, tearing into the light, but even as he did, the blackened figures hissed their chant, resonating deep in his soul. "Join us." In that pivotal moment, a shriek pierced the air, a warning, a plea, or perhaps the final cry of lost souls, just as the truck catapulted toward the unknown. What awaited him on the other side of choice? In the blur, one thought spiraled in his mind. Had he chosen deliverance, or had he merely walked into deeper despair? The world outside exploded into chaos. Bright light engulfed him, but it wasn't warm. It crackled with energy, like a storm before the strike. Alex squeezed his eyes shut, his fingers desperate around the steering wheel. The shadows screamed louder, their wails transforming into a cacophony of tortured souls pleading and accusing. Each note struck a chord deep in his chest, amplifying the guilt he had tried to silence. He opened his eyes, heart pounding, breath shallow. As he forced himself to look, the forward view morphed, not into the promised salvation he sought, but into a blighted landscape, a graveyard of dreams. The asphalt twisted and warped beneath the truck, giving way to fields of fading lights, ghostly apparitions hovering in the air, looking down with sorrowful eyes. "What is this place?" he gasped, but no one answered. An answer was not what he needed. It was a reckoning. The shadows swarmed around him, sweeping into the cab, filling every corner with cold whispers. They slithered, creeping into his thoughts. "You think you've escaped. Your sins bind you more than chains ever could." For a moment, the images faded. He saw Ethan again, not as a visage of anger, but as a child, smiling, innocent. The laughter of their shared childhood pierced through the fog. "You left me," Ethan's voice echoed, soft yet accusatory. The weight of betrayal twisted deep inside him like a knife, slicing clean through denial. The truck jolted violently, as if responding to his inner turmoil. The dashboard lights flickered erratically. Entranced, Alex struggled against the deepening terror and reached for the radio knob.
Static filled the cabin, crackling wildly until a voice broke through. "Alex, come back. Finish what you started." It was Ethan again, calling from beyond. Filling the air with memories, with unfinished business, everything Alex had tried to run from. The truck lurched, shaking him from his stupor as if it sought to drag him down into oblivion. The shadows trembled with anticipation. "Join us," they hissed, the sound rumbling like distant thunder. "No!" he shouted, thundering back against them. It was all he could think to say, but it did little to halt their advance, enveloping him like a thick fog. They reached toward him, fingers elongated and bony, grasping for his soul. As he grasped the wheel tighter, an instinct surged within him, a primal need for survival. Punching the gas, the truck hurled forward, the engine bellowing in frustration against the forces pulling him back. The ground ripped beneath him, and a crack opened wide, threatening to swallow him whole. "Run!" he screamed, the words erupting from his chest as he fought against the weight of shadows, the fear clawing at his mind. His pulse raced, pushing a torrent of adrenaline through his veins. But there was nowhere to run. The asphalt twisted, the glowing light faded further into darkness, becoming a void of nothingness. And then he saw it, a silver glimmer cutting through the abyss, not just light, but a figure emerging from the depths. Ethereal, glowing, it stood like a beacon, and it was close, so close. Was it reward or a trap? "Help me!" Alex yelled, stretching his hand toward this new glow, but even as he called out, the shadows shrieked again, this time in fury, rage that shook the very ground he drove upon. In a flash of instinct, he swerved the wheel hard to the right. Tires screeched, smoke billowed, and he felt weightless, caught between the light and the dark. The shadows howled, fury igniting their whispers. But what was shifting? What was real? He couldn't tell. As the truck spun toward the glowing figure, the ground trembled violently beneath him, a chasm threatening to swallow everything up in despair. Time froze as he reached to grasp the light, but the shadows snarled around him, the sound mixing with the roar of his heart. Just as suddenly as it began, silence fell. In that silence, Alex realized he stood at the edge of everything he had ever avoided. "Choose!" their voices echoed louder and louder, shaking him to his core. With every ounce of strength, he knew he must make a decision. But as the light hung there, radiant and inviting, he wondered if it was nothing more than an illusion or the final salvation he had been searching for. A looming dread settled deep within him. What would he face on the other side? Would he find Ethan at last, or plunge deeper into darkness? The truck trembled, caught in the balance, as he prepared to face the unknown. Alex's heart pounded, a relentless cadence that echoed through the truck's cab. He clenched the steering wheel tighter, knuckles white and trembling. The fog of shadows loomed around him, shrieking with rage, but the light beckoned like a long-lost friend. "Do it!" the specters roared, their voices twisting into anguished howls that rattled his bones. Choose now or be lost forever. Time seemed suspended, an oppressive weight pressing down on him as he fought to make sense of it all. Every ghostly face melded into a blurred reminder of every wrong turn, every heart he'd left behind. Ethan's spirit stood out among them, a beacon of sorrow and anger intertwined. With a swift intake of breath, Alex slammed his foot on the gas. The truck lurched toward the glimmering figure, light spilling into the cab as he barreled toward potential salvation. One thought crushed against his ribs: "I cannot turn back, not this time." "Face us," the shadows cried, their chilling voices mingling with his racing heartbeat. He surged forward, propelled by a mixture of fear and hope. The light grew blinding, enveloping him completely, and as he crossed into its embrace, reality unfurled like an old film reel. Suddenly, memory washed over him, a montage of laughter, of careless days spent racing through fields with Ethan. He saw Sarah, too, smiling, glowing. His chest ached with nostalgia, a warmth that contrasted sharply against the shadows clawing at him. Then came the crash. Jagged images of the accident shattered the warmth, the sound of shattering glass, the smell of burning rubber. His heart sank. The guilt tightened around him like a noose, pulling him down. In that moment, Alex understood what the light represented: acceptance. He had to confront the ghosts of his past, not to escape them, but to find closure. "Ethan, Sarah," he whispered, "I'm so sorry." The light surged forward, and suddenly he was in a vast expanse of shimmering brightness, a weightless freedom that felt overwhelming. All at once, the specters of his past broke through the shadowy walls he had built, surrounded him without judgment. "We're not here to hurt you," Ethan's voice floated through the ether, calm and accepting. "You've kept us trapped with your fear." The shadows receded, their wrath lost to understanding. Alex's eyes brimmed with tears as he wept for the lives lost, for his neglect, for his cowardice. He felt the oppressive burden lift, a shocking relief that made him feel lighter than air. As the figures coalesced, one thing became clear. Release was not about letting go of the past. It was about embracing it, acknowledging the pain and the love that had shaped him. "You can be free," Sarah said softly, her voice a warm embrace. They reached for him, ethereal hands guiding him forward. The light pulsed gently, urging him to step deeper into acceptance. It's okay to remember. It's okay to forgive yourself. His heartbeat steadied as he stepped forward, feeling the warmth radiate from their laughter, feeling the weight of guilt transform into compassion. In that cathartic release, he found clarity. He could return home a new man, one with a renewed commitment to honor their memory by living fully. With every stride, the shadows that had haunted him faded into whispers of understanding. The weight of sorrow still lingered, but it no longer held him captive. He stood at the threshold, a radiant space where fear and love intertwined. "I will not forget you," he vowed, his voice steady. "Thank you for setting me free." As he stepped through, the light enveloped him again, whispering a new chapter in his life, a chance to love, to remember, and to live unburdened by the past. And then, in a brilliant flash, everything began to dissolve. Alex found himself back on the highway, the truck steady beneath him, the night sky clear and inviting. The road ahead stretched endlessly, and for the first time in years, he felt the cool wind on his skin, a sense of renewal. He took a deep breath, ready to embrace the world with open arms. Alex glanced at the cab, a bittersweet smile on his lips. In the distance, he could swear he heard laughter, familiar and joyful. He pressed down on the accelerator, determined to drive into the new dawn. The echoes of the past would guide him, but they would no longer trap him. He drove on, through shadow and light, ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that the ghosts of his past were no longer fears to escape, but spirits to honor as he forged a new path on the open road. Thank you for joining Alex on his chilling journey. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately so you won't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about how Alex's journey can inspire us. And please share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Your engagement makes this community stronger. Stand with us.